get out there and represent myself.
Welcome to this WEBN special report, The March for Our Lives. On February 14th, a gunman in Parkland, Florida shot and killed 17 people inside a high school there. Since that shooting, the students have transformed themselves from victims into activists, demanding lawmakers reform current gun laws to prevent tragedies like the one they witnessed. On Saturday, March 24th, millions around the world took to the streets to support the students and inspire change.
Lenore Munoz was one of the students inside Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School when shots rang out. She was here in Boston to share her story.
I remember fourth period. I was tired but happy after my lunch event. I remember walking outside because of the fire drill. I remember the absolute terror of being outside hearing code red, run! I remember needing to tell my family that I was alive and barely being able to send the text because I was in real danger and they couldn't stop it or help me.
I remember receiving a text from my younger sister saying, "I'm safe, code red, school shooter, do not call." I remember freezing thinking, no, this can't be real. Shooter still at large at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. It was real. My earth shattered. The only thing I could think to say is, Lenore, I love you so much.
I remember the only time I cried that day when my sister told me she loved me. I remember hearing the knocks of the SWAT team. I can still hear them knocking. Apparently, in America, first responders need to come with guns and helicopters for us to go home from school. I remember collapsing the next day because I got up and had to remember those who never did. I remember hearing my dad knock on my door the next day and falling apart because I thought it was happening again. I will always remember every single detail.
As a Parkland student, I went through the worst thing I'll ever go through in my life, and I want everyone to know how awful it is because it can't happen again. Not anywhere, not in school, not on the streets, not in the communities, nowhere. And we can't live with this terror of being shot every day.
The march in Boston began at Madison Park High School in Roxbury. WEBN's Tommaso de Blasi and his crew were with the students before they took to the streets.
School! Our school! No school! Our schools! Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough is
Students
enough!
are waiting outside Madison Park Vocational High School before they head over to the Boston Common to march for their lives.
Legislation. We can march, but also we need legislation. We need stronger legislation.
We're really just trying to get our message out there, and we'll be showing in full force to our legislators that the bills that we want passed better be passed. We're doing voter registration at the booths here and at the Common so that they know that we'll be ready to vote people into office who care about our issues.
The real important thing is that we're out here trying to make a difference. We're trying to get laws passed, and we're trying to get our schools safer, and that's what really matters.
This isn't just about Parkland. This is about our neighborhoods, our streets. It's not just about school. It's a general thing. People need to feel safe in their homes, people need to feel safe in their communities, and students need to feel safe in their schools. So it's important that we focus on all of these things and, again, push for legislation that covers all bases.
You know what I love about students is that they don't wait. They're impatient. And when it comes to gun laws, we need someone who's going to be impatient, and we need a group of people who are going to push us faster than typically systems want to push.
Former City Councilor Tito Jackson wasn't the only politician to support the movement in Roxbury. Senator Elizabeth Warren was there too.
We could do better in terms of background checks. We could do better in terms of raising the age on gun sales. We could do better in terms of the kinds of weapons that are available across this country. Military weapons should not be on our streets and in our schools. And those are just the kind of common sense changes that the overwhelming majority of Americans want to see.
This isn't a moment, it's a movement. You know, we're going to be out here for the long run. It's not just today. We're going to keep fighting till we get these laws passed.
This isn't the end.
Now we go to WEBN reporter Javier Rodriguez, who picks up our coverage at the 2-mile mark.
These protesters started in Roxbury and have now made their way to the Boston Common. They are rallying together in hopes of ending gun violence.
I don't really want kids to die. Kids are nice.
Adults have always said children are the future, and we are coming to claim that title. We are not just going to sit idly by and let our lives be threatened and let people that we love die because of something so ridiculous as people fighting for their Second Amendment rights, especially when those were made back when guns could only fire like one round and they were so hard to load and stuff like that. It's just the idea that times have changed. These rifles, these weapons are now literally just weapons of mass destruction. They're designed to hurt people, and we are just not going to allow people to die for something like that. It's not worth it, and children deserve to feel safe in their schools. Everyone deserves to feel safe from gun violence.
You can't stop the next generation from taking over, and there is no use in holding on to outdated laws for new people.
I would say to Congress and Trump, watch out, because our generation's gonna be voting soon, and there's definitely gonna be some changes based on what we're seeing right now.
We all have the right to speak our voice. That's why we have the First Amendment. But I truly believe that if you are against gun control, then you are against human lives.
The world is turning into something that we don't want. Like, we're growing up and we're gonna have to fear our kids getting shot at school, and we're not gonna feel safe. So we want that to change so we can feel safe and really learn and not focus on oh, is it gonna happen to us? Who's gonna be next?
When you become older, you're not gonna want to tell your kids when they ask you about this time in history that you just sat and watched on TV. We get to be the ones that are fighting and standing up for ourselves because this is our country and this is our life.
Speak up, call your congressmen, call your representatives, and even when adults tell you to be quiet or that you don't know what you're talking about, just keep talking, because in the end, we're fighting for ourselves here if nobody else is going to do it.
We did our school walkout last week, and it was so inspiring just to see how many people in our school and how many people in Natick really want to come together and make a change. In Parkland survivors, they've just really encouraged everyone around the world to change and stand up for what we are needing right now.
Register to vote, because if you're 18, you can register. If you're 16 or 17, you can free register. And 2018 in the Senate and 2020 for the presidency, we do have the power to make the changes that we want to see.
A lot of people have lost hope since the 2016 election, and I think marches like this really do bring more hope into society.
Marches across the nation were organized almost entirely by students. Reporter Chloe Tebow was on the Boston Common when the marchers joined forces with those who were waiting for them.
Come on, make some noise! They came all the way from Roxbury!
Are gathered here behind me.
And that is thanks to these students turned activists.
Enough is enough! Enough is enough!
The Friday after the Parkland shooting, I organized a sit-in at my high school to call attention to the inaction from our government on the concept of gun violence, and from there everything happened. I got to work with some organizers from Somerville, Arlington, Boston, Weston. We all joined together and started working with the March for Our Lives.
I just went to a meeting and it just happened organically. There's no other way to put it. It just happened. Like I said, I didn't come in here thinking I need to be a leader, I need to make this happen. I just voiced my opinion and I'm here.
I think the fact that students are the root of this movement, we are this movement, we have created a narrative that is entirely based in student voice and power.
Dear Congress,
Lately, though, my time has been consumed by other things. Researching gun control laws, for example.
On that day, I had a lot of friends text me, there's a shooter at our school, etc. And I talked to my friends and they were wondering if their siblings were alive. And that's something I have to live with for the rest of my life. But so many other people have to live with that all the time. That's why I'm here.
This is, again, for students, by the students. So it is important for us to show up, pre-register, vote them out, because we will make them listen. If they do not listen, we will vote them out. Vote them out if they don't listen to us. Vote them out, vote them out, vote them out.
2018, we're here. We're going to vote out politicians that prioritize guns over children's lives. We're done with it. We're going to turn 18. We're going to vote. We're going to run for office, and we're going to make sure that the change we want to happen happens.
We are angry, yet hopeful. We are tired, yet relentless. We are optimistic. We are powerful, and we are courageous.
We make this history, make this a movement that does not just die today. It is going to last until we get the change that we need, not want, that we need.
While everyone was flexing their First Amendment right, others say they were there to protect the Second.
I'm here to support the Second Amendment and our constitutional right to own guns.
Protect kids, not guns. Protect kids, not guns.
I heard there was a rally supporting our Second Amendment, essentially, and everyone wants to take guns away. It's already very highly restricted in the state of Massachusetts, as it is. It's very difficult to get a concealed carry license, and if you get one, the guns that you can get legally are already very restricted in this state. If you go to New Hampshire, Vermont, or Maine, very easy to get a gun. They have constitutional carry, and they have very low crime. But here in Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, and Connecticut, that's where the crime is at. So New England's a case study.
No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA, no Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA.
It's always in the gun-free zones where these mass shootings happen. So whether it's gun-free school zones, whether it's gun-free zones like they had in the Vegas shooter, for instance, that was a gun-free zone. Like it was in the Orlando nightclub, that was a gun-free zone. Many teachers already have concealed carry firearm license in many states. So we should get rid of the gun-free school zone, and if they choose to carry, that's fine. We should definitely have more security details, unlike the disaster in Broward County where they were hiding. We need more cops at schools protecting the children, absolutely.
There was clear opposition in Boston, but in nearby Providence, Rhode Island, every protester seemed to be on the same side.
I'm Ross Ketchke reporting for WEBN News here in Providence, Rhode Island. Today's March for Our Lives was organized almost entirely by local students fighting to end gun violence across the nation.
Planning March for Our Lives Rhode Island was pretty crazy. I'm extremely proud of all the student speakers. I'm proud to say, you know, Rhode Island is taking action.
Students shouldn't have to fear for their lives, especially in school. Kids spend more of their times in school than at their own home, so why is it so hard for you to keep us safe? More guns will do nothing to help.
This is a prominent issue that we need to address yesterday.
If the person that were trying to hurt me didn't have an assault weapon, then maybe not as many people would have gotten hurt.
We as young people, even though we can't vote yet or we don't really have a huge say in the legislation, but we're out here and our voices need to be heard, and that's what we're doing today.
And also remember that the NRA would not have the power that it has in Congress if it weren't for the power of money in Congress.
I'm inspired by this turnout, by your leadership, by your determination. I'm inspired because I hear your voices loud and clear, and we want our Republican colleagues in Washington to also hear you loud and clear that enough is enough.
The problem is not the person, but the gun. Countless tragedies will continue to occur until the laws are stronger, until the rules are stricter. No civilian should ever be able to purchase a weapon of war, especially someone as young as 18. Wake up!
We are going to keep going until assault weapons are banned,
They're called military-style weapons because they belong in the military. They do not belong in our schools, on our streets, and in our communities.
And the voices of young people and your staying in this fight is going to make the difference. Because it has to be clear to folks that if you don't do the responsible thing and enact common sense proposals to reduce gun violence in this country, you don't deserve to be in office.
Speakers in Providence and around the country encouraged everyone marching to get out and vote this November. WEBN's Erin Crowley spoke to those ready to make their voices heard at the voting booths.
One popular phrase from today was "vote them out," referring to politicians who disagree with the change that these demonstrators are trying to make.
That's a 40-year-old pen. That we need to take action to control guns. There's too many people who are mindlessly supporting the gun culture. This discussion is about lives. It all comes down to lives. And the NRA does a brilliant job of shifting the discussion to guns.
Activism and engagement is essential to keeping the pressure on our representatives and continuing this conversation.
I'm here with the Mass Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence. We're here to support the students who are asking that our state legislature pass stronger gun violence prevention laws. It's really wonderful to see how many young people are out today and how many young people understand that by coming out, they can influence public policy. They're going to be able to influence what goes on in our state and what goes on across our country. They're going to be voters, and our elected officials have to listen to them.
I was part of the generation that was involved in the anti-war demonstration, and when the war began to affect us, we started to demonstrate. And I think that that's what's happening now.
And so we brought our kids up here. We went to the Women's March a few months ago, and it's important to us to start them early and understand that people can really change things and just be good role models for them.
And it's a very difficult fight. 40 years and not much has gotten better.
The big reasons I came was to support the younger generations in these fantastic efforts. Nobody has been able to really move this issue significantly enough to this point, and finally people are starting to listen, and we want to support all of these efforts.
Because the more people involved, the bigger the statement is made and the more likely for change to be made.
There needs to be a lot of lobbying up on Beacon Hill, people calling their legislators, students calling their legislators, voters calling their legislators, to get a couple of laws passed that will make a big difference.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Our generation has taken over a lot of the progress and a lot of the energy behind these movements. I think our generation is going to have to be the ones responsible for making a lot of the changes, because it seems like older generations are just not as willing to speak up and to get out and do the things that they need to do.
And we need to continue the efforts that have been made in the past that seem to be growing. There seems to be a tipping point, and I wanted to be part of that point.
Protesters and speakers also addressed President Trump's call to arm teachers in the classroom.
I do not want a gun!
Arming teachers and adding more police to our school will not create more security. It will only reinforce the already existing criminalization of our youth and the militarization of our schools.
How is a teacher, even one that was previously trained by the United States Armed Services, expected to do better than a trained police officer who is constantly going through weapons training? Specifically, one of those teachers that our president considers adept. One of those teachers that our president believes should be armed. As a vet, I can tell you that a handgun in the hands of an untrained, overworked teacher will not be an effective measure to prevent these mass shootings.
We're all education majors. I think we can all say we don't like that idea.
Yeah,
I wouldn't trust me with a gun.
I don't think anybody with the empathy and compassion to become a teacher actually has the desire to hold a gun and shoot somebody.
I think that even those that are prepared to have a gun in the classroom are only doing it as a measure of their empathy, and the fact that we have to even discuss putting guns in a classroom is ridiculous.
If you're out in the Dakotas, the police can't get there in 5 minutes like they can here. It takes, they're a good half hour away. So I think if the teacher is trained on how to use it, I believe in that, in certain parts of the country.
I just think that it's ridiculous. Teachers, first off, should not have to defend themselves against this kind of violence, and we shouldn't be having guns in the classroom in the first place. I mean, that's such a hazard, and we shouldn't get to a point in this nation. I mean, it's 2018. We should not have to be doing this to protect our students and, protect people from these horrible crimes. It's unfathomable.
Having teachers armed at schools is no solution to anything. We heard today teachers saying they do not want guns. We don't want to give them guns. That's not their job. Their job is to educate our kids. It's not to take the role of police. It's not to be expert marksmen. We want our teachers teaching our kids.
If you want to arm teachers, arm us with science equipment to spark discovery. Arm us with enough pencils and paper to last all school year. Arm us with books that aren't missing pages. Arm us with equitable funding throughout all school districts. Whose schools? Whose schools?
At every march across the country, protesters spoke out against gun violence. For speakers here in Boston, there was a special focus on violence in communities of color.
As a mom, I've had the horrible opportunity to be standing next to my son as someone tried to kill him on 2 separate occasions. And had the gun not jammed, we will be having a different conversation today. I also had the undesirable pleasure of my house being a crime scene. If it were not for the fact that I fought like hell, this will be a conversation similar to so many moms and dads who have lost their children. There are mothers, fathers, grandmothers from communities of color who were not as fortunate as myself.
This movement was always here. People were always here screaming for change.
Because the thing that sets the people of Parkland apart is our wealth and the color of our skin. We cannot be complacent with a system that designates certain areas as safe while communities of color continue to be neglected, abused, and disproportionately affected by gun violence.
We stand in solidarity with Parkland. We stand in solidarity for all the communities, but more specifically, I'm a black woman before I'm anything. And so I stand for communities of color.
We are sick of the rampant violence, the gun violence that disproportionately affects communities of color. But we must ask ourselves, why? What is the root cause of this terror? So, we already know that black people, people of color, violence is nothing new in this country to us. And it is unfortunate that it took such a tragic incident for us to have this dialogue. But now it is our duty to fight, and it is our duty to win, because our future depends on it.
It shouldn't be unacceptable just when this happens in Parkland and other affluent white communities. We shouldn't just be appalled when safe cities are unsafe. We should take action when any city is unsafe. Especially here in Boston, where 80% of people in Roxbury will experience gun violence in their lifetime. Just a mile away in the Back Bay, which is predominantly white, that number drops down to 10%.
From January until the day you guys are standing out here, there's been 30 shootings that have went unheard in communities of color.
There cannot be one more story like that of Cortland Arrington from Huffman High. She was a senior like me. She was going to be a nurse. She was shot in school, and no one heard of her death because she was black.
Not one more. There cannot be one more murder murder like that of Stephen Clark, who was shot 20 times in his own backyard by the Sacramento police for carrying a cell phone.
And all of my students come from working class communities that are plagued by gun violence. Me and my people, oppressed people, colonized people, are sick and tired of being ignored by those who are in power.
For years, our young people have marched, screamed, and protested Black Lives Matter, and the response was silence. Well, I'm here today to tell you silence is violence.
Thank you for watching this WEBN special report, The March for Our Lives. Some states have already introduced new gun legislation since the Parkland shooting. Florida has actually passed a new law. The March for Our Lives protesters say this is the beginning of a movement and they won't stop until they put an end to gun violence. I'm Christina Gesford. We now leave you with a list of names of everyone who made this program possible. Thank you for watching.
If you are 25 and older, we're not talking to you.